So Rosalind, you and I worked together for 7 years at the New Zealand Commission as the Chief Commissioner and the Executive Director, and I think we both felt we had a pretty effective partnership, but there were certainly, I think, some challenges that we faced that wouldn't have been present in a more traditional governance management situation.
You're absolutely right about that. And it really does come down to the fact that national human rights institutions have a unique structure where members or commissioners appointed do have a governance role, but they also have a role in undertaking activities relating to the strategic objectives and priorities of the Commission. And many of them are full-time, which is very rare in the private sector in terms of the governance management relationship. So for the senior executive officer or the executive director, it's quite a challenge.
It certainly was. I mean, I had a situation where I absolutely needed to directly support you in providing an effective service to all the commissioners in their governance roles, but also their delivery roles. But I also had a situation where commissioners were working closely and directly with the staff who reported to me, and that I needed to run an effective and efficient organisation. And to be honest, sometimes those different responsibilities were in direct conflict with each other.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, of course, it wasn't any easier for the Chief Commissioner, who had both the responsibility to support and ensure that the individual commissioners felt that they were able to deliver on their mandates, but also ensure that they operated together as a collective on behalf of the organisation as a whole, and that you were able to manage the delegated responsibilities that you had of staff and finances and so on, while supporting the commissioners. So it is a very challenging situation.
Absolutely.
So I think it's clear from what we both just said that the critical relationship is that between the chair or president or chief commissioner and the senior executive officer, again, whatever they're called. And it's important that those two people have a shared understanding of the organisation's role and responsibilities, of the strategic priorities, and of the way in which the organisation is to be managed. So it would be really interesting to hear how you saw your role as the senior executive officer.
Sure. Well, formally, my role was to run an efficient and effective organisation and to support and service the commissioners in providing strategic advice, but also in ensuring I was supporting the delivery of their statutory functions.
Well, that all sounds pretty straightforward. So what were the challenges?
Actually, it's because of the context that you just described. There were such a number of careful lines to tread. I mean, you start really with looking at the external environment, and I'm the head of staff of a national human rights institution. So you'd got government and parliament to ensure that they saw you as an efficient and effective organisation delivering on its mandate, and that they maintained your budget and preferably increased it. You'd also got the international community needing to meet their standards, but also to engage, to share good practice and learn from others. And then you've got also the domestic communities, be they geographical or population-based or issue-based, and they often had really significant expectations of what you could do on their behalf, often trying to push the boundaries of your role, and you had a lot of expectations to manage. And I think with staff, there was also a stakeholder approach needed there. NHRIs are value-driven organisations. People are passionate about the issues. So as a manager, you can't possibly have a sort of command and control approach, but equally laissez-faire doesn't work either. And you somehow need to weave the line between enabling true and effective engagement of the staff in the substance and the business of the organisation, whilst making sure it doesn't descend into organisational stagnation and dysfunction.
And I would certainly underline the importance and the need for particularly the chair or chief commissioner to value and pay attention to good management in a national human rights institution. I don't think we've done enough of that. We're often preoccupied with the human rights issues, but they're critical to its effectiveness. But what about the relationships that you had with commissioners?
Well, I was talking about staff, and I think in that context, that's a particularly fraught area for commissioner and senior executive officer, executive director relationships. And the reason for that is because the commissioners are working full-time in the organisation and directly with some of the staff. And that can lead to them having some very close relationships with the staff. So the commissioners want good management, and they want to have policies and practices in place that support that management, and rightly so. But sometimes when a manager was doing some intervention with a staff member, if that staff member had a particularly close relationship with the commissioner, that could become very difficult for the line manager to then carry that management line through, and boundaries got blurred.
Okay, but what about actual support for the commissioners and their roles?
Well, that was both providing the commissioners with support in their governance role and also in delivering activities. And I think whilst commissioner involvement in delivering activities is absolutely appropriate and, you know, a very positive added dimension to the work of NHRIs, it is something that can lead to some tensions. Commissioners understandably want to deliver and have an impact in their term of office, and that doesn't always help the SEO to manage workloads or to work on matters that are of internal importance, such as systems or professional development, because there is a tension between the commissioner wish to deliver projects and the need to run the organisation well.
So how did you address these challenges?
Well, it did sometimes feel like I had absolutely no authority to act. It was like power but no power, and really negotiation, mediation skills, I think, were essential to the role as I worked it through. But to some extent, I did manage it through setting up systems and processes that we all signed up to and worked to. And I think a really important point there is that I developed them in consultation with commissioners. They weren't imposed, and there was a sense of ownership. So, for example, organisation-wide planning processes and resource allocation processes that meant we could manage some of the workload issues and the responsibility issues. Documented roles and responsibilities and delegations. As you know, we developed the Commissioner Handbook, which helped us to do that. And I think really importantly, set points of review, because you can set these things up, but you learn through experience and can adjust them and adapt them as they go along, so they remain fresh and appropriate. But also, sometimes they can relax over time as trust and maturity grows, and so you're not too processy about the way you go about things. I think what was also important for me was to get support and advice from other SEOs in other national human rights institutions. The role of the SEO, I think, is intellectually and emotionally demanding, and it can be really quite lonely. You're the only person in the whole country doing a role that is like yours, and you are squashed there between the staff and the commissioners in some quite tense areas of managing within an organisational structure such as an NHRI. And I did find that SEOs around the world, even if their structures were slightly different and their roles were slightly different, there was an understanding of the position that you were in. I certainly remember going to Palestine and spending some time there with the Independent Human Rights Commission and going around watching Randa in her day-to-day work. And you couldn't get a more different context socially and politically between Palestine and New Zealand, and yet I was watching what was unfolding for Randa on a daily basis, and I was constantly saying, that's my job, that's what I do, you know, and I think there was a lot of commonality. But essentially, I do think it really does in the end boil down to, as you said, the critical relationship between the Chief Commissioner, or whatever they're called, and the SEO, or Executive Director. And it's absolutely vital that we in our roles weave things through together. And I think what we managed to do, we certainly had our disagreements, but we worked them through, and we respected each other's roles and the different needs that we had from those roles, and found a way through that met enough of each of our needs to make it work. Made it our business to make it work for both of us.